Hi everybody, Reef Girl here. This update is kind of a lessons learned update. And I know now, or I suspect I know, what I did wrong with this tank. It first started cycling in late March of 2016, and I started adding corals about a month later. I added a lot of corals really quickly, and my theory about that was that if I was going to add a lot of high demand corals really quickly, I should probably do some pretty hefty dosing at the same time. So I based my dosing of calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity on doing some monitoring of what the tank was using and also combining that with what I had been dosing when the hard corals were in my 29-gallon cube. So it was kind of a sort of half-calculated guess. I really was not as careful as I should have been in trying to figure out what I should be dosing. And I think that's what resulted in having ridiculously high alkalinity in my tank. I think that high alkalinity also contributed to killing these acros, aside from the clown gobies hanging out in them because they really did like to perch in them, and it was probably constantly irritating them. But I'm firmly convinced that the mistake that I made with overdosing alkalinity was the major problem I had in this tank. I'm happy to say that once I identified that problem, I'm pretty sure I have it under control now because things are looking much, much better. So, on with the next. The next problem that I had was my two clown gobies, the green and the yellow, developed ick. And I'm reasonably sure it came in on the snails that I added to my sump to control some algae issues I was having in places I could not reach. Add to that the fact that I added these snails only a few days before we were planning on taking an extended long weekend away. The day before we left, I noticed the white spots on the green clown goby. We were gone for 5 days, and by then it was too late. They rallied a couple of times, but ultimately they both died. Now the Swellesii basslet was fine. So with all of this going on, the high alk also killed the Halloween hermit crab, and I decided that maybe it was time to beef up my cleanup crew with a bunch of hermit crabs and maybe a shrimp. Because I knew that there was detritus collecting. Every time I did a water change, I was blowing all kinds of gunk out of the rocks. And I felt there was probably enough there for a lot of hermit crabs to feed on. And so I got 10 varying sizes, and they went right to work, and they did great. So along with the new cleanup crew, I really focused on water changes every single day to try and normalize the alkalinity. And I really think that made a difference as well. So things are starting to look up in here, and I will do a full update when I get a chance, but this was just kind of a bad news rescue update on the 20-gallon nano SPS LPS with the 15-gallon sump. And I really felt like because I captured all this footage, it might be interesting to share it. Made a lot of mistakes in the early months of this tank. I'm not experienced with keeping LPS and SPS exclusively in a system, and I think it shows in what went on here. I'm really happy that I was able to kind of figure out what was going on before it was too late, especially for that pectinia right there. I really would have hated losing this guy, but it is actually thriving and doing really, really well. Now I just need to work on getting that color back, the bright green. So here we are. Things are looking up, and I believe that algae sticking out of the top of the Goniopora gets periodically eaten up by the hermits. Every once in a while it completely disappears. The golden heart frog spawn is looking really good. It expands well, and overall it really is coming back. The water's much clearer. I don't have the horrible gunk building up everywhere. Although my various parameters are a little high. They are in balance with each other at the moment. And I just want to keep testing and working at it and make sure I can keep it that way. So of course, now that things are looking up and I feel they're in a little bit better control, I couldn't resist picking up a few more things to fill the empty spaces that are left where acros had died and I removed them. And one thing I found is that I'm really liking these birds' nests. Anything that seems to have a fuzzy polyp like this seems to really like it in here. And the top of this pillar is an area of really high flow. So the polyps come out and they wave around, and it's pretty awesome. Also, my acros are starting to color up the way they should, and I'm seeing green where I should see green instead of brown. These multi-colors on this bird's nest are just fantastic, and I'm so pleased that they're starting to respond well, I think, to the tighter control over the water quality. This particular one is really, really pretty. This filming just doesn't do it justice. There's a bit of green there where I had to nip off an arm that was covered with algae. It got damaged in shipping. So things are looking good. I'm looking forward to really seeing these things green up and color up. And especially since I do have the Red Sea colors program, I have A, C, and D. I wasn't able to get B, but instead I'm using Two Little Fishies potassium supplement, and we'll see how things go. I'm amazed with the colors, and like I said, the fuzzy polyps seem to really thrive in this aquarium. And of course, there are always things going on that we have to watch for. And I noticed recently that this torch coral is really getting close to the Duncan. It's starting to put out extra long sweeper tentacles, and sometimes that Duncan looks like it's shrinking away a little bit. So I decided I needed to move that, but I don't have a lot of space because I've got the Lobophilia right here and the bubble coral that I'm trying to nurture right behind it. So this torch coral is kind of in a tight spot, and I'm going to see if I can move it. So I moved it a little bit away from the Duncan, and because of the way the flow is directed in this area, I'm hoping that the tentacles go more straight up. But having said that, I do notice that, of course, it's like they're seeking out to see what might be downflow from them. And now, get ready, because he's going to come out. There's the basslet. Ever since he's the only fish in the tank, he comes out a lot more often. So I have a feeling the gobies were scaring him maybe a little bit, but I see him much more often these days. So here's a quick tour of some of the other corals, and all of them really are picking up. They were looking sad and in decline for quite a few weeks. I was seriously worried about many of them, and now with the tighter control over the water quality and being more careful with dosing, I actually stopped dosing completely. Now that I'm doing the water changes, whatever I need to have replaced is being replaced. Things are looking much better, and I'm really hoping that I can manage to get things on track, predictable, understand what my tank is using and what I need to do to add back to it, because I'm not going to keep up the 10% daily water changes. It's in fact, I'm not doing those right at the moment. I stopped them probably pretty much the end of August. So the whole tank is looking well recovered, and I hope on its way to thriving instead of just trying to hang on and withstand what I've been doing to it. So I hope you enjoyed this little update. It's kind of a little bit eclectic, but I had all this footage and I thought it might be a good time to share it, so I can show you guys what's been happening in this tank. I'll do a proper update probably in another month or so, maybe sooner depending on what goes on, and we'll see what happens. There's my Goniastria. I call it the ET coral. So like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate hearing from you guys. Always looking for advice and comments, and if anybody has any suggestions about something I can do better that I'm not doing. I tend to make a tank pretty crowded, but I love the lush wall-to-wall look of coral, and it's just a matter of finding the things that are compatible with each other and aren't going to fight with each other, and hopefully grow side by side. And I know that one day this is going to be too much for in here, and of course it's going to be inevitable if I want to keep everything I have. I think a new bigger tank is in my future. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. I don't know when, but like everybody, I'm always looking for bigger and better.